Minute 37 na Legislature ng Guam is back in session. Good morning, colleagues. We are still on second reading. We will begin today with Bill number 122-37 COR. Senator Perez, you are recognized.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to accept substitute version Bill 122-37.
There's a motion to accept a substitute on the floor version of the bill. Is there any objection to that motion? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Senator Perez. Yes, as substituted, as amended by the committee and substituted on the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to place substituted version Bill 122-37 to the third reading file, and I wish to discuss.
Please proceed.
For more than a decade, insurance commissioners of Guam have recognized the need to modernize Guam's insurance law as a matter of necessity in order to protect consumers. One of the important safeguards is ensuring insurance companies maintain a necessary level of capital for their policyholders through several measures, such as requiring a certain amount of paid-in capital per line of insurance, the submission of annual financial statements, and the publication when insurance companies pay dividends. The purpose of Bill 122-37 is to increase safeguards to policyholders by requiring insurance companies to obtain prior approval from the insurance commissioner for the distribution of extraordinary dividends and the distribution of loans and advances. Extraordinary dividends or distributions is a dividend or distribution of cash or other property whose fair market value, together with that of other dividends or distributions made within a period of 12 consecutive months, ending on the date in which the proposed dividend is scheduled for payment or distribution, is the lesser of the following: 10% of the company's surplus as regards to the policyholders, or the net income of the company for the 12-month period preceding the 31st of December, not including prorated distributions of any class of the company's securities. So the origins of this bill is found within the Insurance Holding Act, one of the model legislations recommended for adoption by the insurance commissioners that requires companies within a holding system to maintain a required level of capital and surplus before dividends can be declared and paid. During the public hearing, Ray Schnabel of the Insurance Association of Guam testified in support of the bill to prevent insurance company failures of the past, where it was insolvent because of lack of cash to pay claims. He also stated, but the other fear is when it comes to financial oversight over insurance companies, it's a very long process. Audits are done only every 3 years to get a good look inside the meat and bones of an insurance company. It's a very slow picture that emerges when an insurance company is in financial trouble. Unfortunately, the first set of people who know that the insurance company is in trouble is its board and shareholders. And what could happen, as it has happened in other places, is that the shareholders and the board will try to empty out the cash to themselves before the insurance company declares bankruptcy with less money to pay claims and creditors. And this is what this bill can help prevent. The amended bill incorporates the recommendations of the public hearing, which primarily was to strengthen the due process. Should the request for the distribution of extraordinary dividends, loans, and advances be denied by the insurance commissioner. So we included the adjudication and AAA process to ensure that should there be a denial, that they would have a hearing. Bill 122-37 also aims to standardize best practices to ensure a level playing field within the industry, which can in turn cultivate growth and better serve the needs of our island. In the aftermath of Mawar, claims made were an instrumental part of our recovery and resiliency. It is important that measures such as Bill 122-37 continue to provide assurances that capitalization remains strong in our times of need. Bill 122-37 was created in close collaboration with the Department of Revenue and Taxation's regulatory branch, and prior to its introduction, received feedback from the Insurance Association of Guam. I ask for my colleagues' support. Situs Masi.
Situs Masi, Senator. On the bill, is there any senator who'd like to be recognized on the bill? Senator Blas, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, my initial reaction to the bill was, for the most part, for most insurance companies that exist on this island, this may not be an enforceable act. However, I recognize that on page 2, line 6, that it limits this authority to basically just domestic companies. Now, domestic companies as defined, in our insurance laws, basically companies that have its roots and its foundations on this island. So I recognize that. However, while I can see the value in this, there are some concerns with regards to government reach into business activity. While I understand the concern and the fear that these companies, we want to make sure they continue to remain solvent, and that their ability to pay to pay claims when they need to occur is not marred or is not injured by any need to be able to pay dividends and or to provide loans and the like. So I'm going to look into this a little bit more. Again, I understand the concern, I understand the value. I just don't know, first off, one, while I'm assured based on the language here that it is just on what is a very small market as compared to the number of companies that do business on the island, as to whether or not is this an unfair advantage, business advantage, and are we stifling and are we harming local business by not imposing these same restrictions, and can we impose these same requirements on foreign and alien insurance companies? So while I would like to be able to support this, I still have my concerns with regards to the enforceability, as well as whether or not it'll provide or give undue harm or harm and disadvantage to our local companies as opposed to other companies that do businesses here. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the bill, is there any other senator who'd like to be recognized on the bill? Senator Fisher, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to follow up a little bit on what my friend, the observations that my friend from Barrigada was just making. And honestly, I don't know the answer to this, and I would like to ask the author of this bill whether or not, in order to let or enter a contract of insurance on Guam, the insurer must be formed or incorporated on Guam.
Would the sponsor yield to that question?
In order to transact business on Guam, they have to obtain a certificate of authority. So, whether it's domiciled in Guam or not, they would have to clear with Department of Revenue and Taxation. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, yes, Madam Speaker, that does answer my question. Thank you. And I just had one more follow-up. Because does this, again, I'm following up on what the gentleman from Barrigada was leading to. In the opinion of the author, does this law create or present a barrier to entry into the Guam insurance market?
Would the sponsor yield to that question?
Thank you for that question. So this law or this bill is actually part of a bigger law called the Insurance Holding Regulatory Act, which has been adopted in many states, and in which many of these companies that we are insured with, so they have to comply with this. And this is like the basic minimum for ensuring that capitalization is strong for these insurance companies. So Guam would not be the only one. In fact, this is just one small measure of a larger regulatory act that's been adopted nationwide. So if anything, it will add to the measures that are already in place, which some have viewed needs adjusting since our insurance law hasn't been amended for some time, and many changes have happened during those decades. And so, yeah, in some ways we're behind the curve in regards to protections, which is something the insurance commissioners, since 2008, from what I could tell, have been saying without any response. So I hope that answers the question.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much for the answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Fisher. On the bill, is there anyone else who'd like to be recognized on the bill?
Good morning. On the main motion, Speaker Chalayi, I recognize you at this time.
Situs Masi. I'm rising in support of this bill. I acknowledge the questions by my colleagues are actually very good. I don't know the answers to them myself, so but I do believe that the sponsor has appropriately answered. And I was reviewing the testimony submitted by the current insurance commissioner, banking and insurance commissioner, Michelle B. Santos, and the testimony also submitted by the Insurance Association of Guam, Mr. Raymond Schnabel, who's the president. And I was surprised that they are not only in support of this bill, but pretty much demanding that we do this and that we should do this, and we need to do this in order to protect customers of insurance companies. This bill will ensure that they have enough money, or that the insurance commissioner can be made aware before they give all their money away in dividends or distributions to shareholders or loans to officers. So it's a very much a consumer protection bill, I think, and I thank the sponsor for it. One of the things that the Banking and Insurance Commissioner, Michelle Santos, said was that she wanted this to apply to all types of insurance, not just life insurance that I think the original bill might have applied to. So it will now apply to all, and I want to note that all of these recommendations seem to have been incorporated into the bill. That one regarding broadening the bill's scope and the bill mandates that the Insurance Commission is going to come up with rules and regulations. So again, I think we have a perfect opportunity to ensure that those rules and regulations are going to be fair to all insurance companies across the board. And we will know the criteria by which they approve or disapprove of the loans or the dividends. So that criteria is going to have to be spelled out in detail in the rules and regulations, which I think is going to be really the crux of the matter. The Insurance Association of Guam, again, Mr. Schnabel, reiterated that he supports the bill, but he wanted a couple of changes. And I note that the bill that we are looking at, the substitute bill, has made these changes. One of them was that if the insurance commissioner is going to deny loans be made or advances being made to shareholders or other subsidiaries of these insurance companies, this bill gives them the authority to deny that. They must approve it before you can give that out now, loans or dividends. And he had asked that there be some kind of an appeals process. And so I do see that the sub-bill now has that appeals process if that action gets denied by the insurance commissioner. And his other recommendation was, again, the criteria for the insurance commissioner's disapproval of an extraordinary dividend and the process and our stakeholders on Guam. So again, I rise in support of this bill, and I thank the sponsor.
Senator Barnett, you are recognized. Good morning.
Bananas Adulis, Madam Speaker. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on the bill. I did attend the public hearing, and I'm not going to stand here and profess to know much of anything about the insurance industry. I'm not in the insurance business. But Mr. Schnabel and Mrs. Santos are. And retiring speaker is correct in that they definitely wholeheartedly supported the bill with the changes that were recommended and instituted into the measure we're discussing by the good author. And that's good enough for me. So I rise in support of this measure, and I ask my colleagues to do the same. And I again commend the author. It's not sexy, but it's smart. And a lot of times smart is sexier than sexy. So, Sidos Masi.
Sidos Masi. Senator Barnett. Vice Speaker, you are recognized.
Banana Sidos, Madam Speaker. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to rise and speak on this bill 122-37, and as noted by our previous speakers, definitely not a sexy bill, but something that can be supported. And you know, when you put the safety net in place and going through the AAA process, it gives an opportunity for the agencies that work with the insurance companies to come back to this August body and approve or reject the process. So I support the efforts and hope that my colleagues could consider the passage of this bill. So just thought I'd rise in support of the measure. Sizus Masi.
Sizus Masi, Vice Speaker. Munya Barnes. On the bill, is there anyone else who'd like to be recognized on the bill? If not, then the sponsor may close on the bill.
I thank my colleagues for their support and discussion of this bill, and I hear the concerns. I just want to restate that the importance of this bill is to ensure that capitalization is strong in times of our need. We know that our insurance companies are a critical part to our recovery and resiliency of this island, especially during times of typhoons, as we've experienced with Mawar. And we're extremely grateful for the service they have done to our community. And what this bill does, it really is a proactive measure to add on to the other measures that would require or ensure enough capital is available. And, we hope that we don't experience another super typhoon, but we want to be assured that, we will be taken care of. And so, again, this bill, the aim is to ensure that our assurances is continued for the claims should we have them. And I want to thank all the stakeholders that came together for their support in this measure. Seduce Mossy, and I ask for my colleagues' support.
Seduce Mossy, Senator Paris.
And I would like to move Bill 122-37 as substituted into the third reading file for voting.
Thank you. On the motion to place Bill 122-37 COR as amended by the committee and further substituted on the floor to the third reading, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Proceeding with second reading, we are now on Bill number 123-37 COR. When you're ready, Senator Perez, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to place substitute version 123-37 onto the floor.
Is there a substitute version you'd like to move?
Yes, I move to place a substitute version, to accept the substitute version of Bill 123-37 COR.
All right, there's a motion to accept the bill as amended by the committee and further substituted on the floor. Is there any objection to that motion to accept the substitute bill? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Senator Perez, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would like to place substitute version Bill 123-37 into the third reading file, and I wish to discuss.
Please proceed.
Bill 123-37 aims to establish license requirements for insurance adjusters in Guam's law. As the bill states, the requirements would include the following. Individuals applying for an adjuster's license must be at least 18 years of age, is a resident of Guam, has not committed any act that is ground for probation, suspension, revocation, or refusal of an adjuster's license, has successfully passed the Guam examination for the lines of authority for which the person has applied, and has paid the fees. For business entities that are applying for the adjuster's license, they must also provide a designated license adjuster, individual adjuster responsible for the business entity's compliance with insurance laws, rules, regulations of Guam, establishes its residence on Guam, and has not committed any act that is grounds for probation, suspension, revocation, refusal, and has also paid the fees. In the bill also, it states that unless the denial of the license, persons who have met these requirements shall be issued an adjuster's license. An adjuster may qualify for a license for any line of authority which is authorized under the laws of Guam. It also codifies that passing a written exam is required, and possible waivers and exemptions are provided in the bill. So after Mawar, it was clear that insurance adjusters provide an invaluable service in the recovery of our island after natural disasters. By codifying the licensing process, Bill 123-37 recognizes the importance of the insurance adjuster profession for our island and for our resiliency. Bill 123-37 was created in close collaboration with the Department of Revenue and Taxation, and it has been endorsed by the Guam Claims Association. They stated the insurance industry is one of the more complicated aspects that play a vital role for many of our people. And this bill ensures that when our people interact with the insurance profession, they can rely on sound, dependable, ethical information from a trained, licensed professional. And I ask for my colleagues' support. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Paris. On the bill, is there any other senator who'd like to be recognized on the bill? If If not, then the sponsor may close on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do have an amendment in the drive, and if I can just have a moment's recess so it can be passed out.
All right, we'll take 1 minute recess to pass out the amendment. We're back from recess. Senator Perez, you had the floor, and the amendment has been passed out.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm not going to proffer that amendment. After speaking with the several stakeholders, I would like to, introduce a separate bill to address that. But in the meantime, would like to close. And so again, this bill was designed to recognize a very important profession that is a big part of our recovery efforts, and one of the main professionals are in the insurance industry to help during recovery time. And so again, what this bill would do, it would recognize the insurance adjuster and also codify the licensing requirements in line with in the insurance industry. And it was well received by those in the public hearing as well as the Guam Claims Association. I thank you for the support of my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
I would like to place Substitute Bill 123-37 into the third reading file.
All right, on the motion to place Bill number 123-37 COR as amended by the committee and substituted on the floor into the third reading, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We're continuing in second reading. We're now on Bill number 143-37 LS. Senator Kanatsa, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to place Bill 143-37 LS as amended by the Committee on General Government Operations and Appropriation, an act to add to the new subsection 96106 to Chapter 96 to Title 10, Guam Code annotated relative to requiring the availability of automated external defibrillators at all government of Guam offices by June 30th of 2024 on the third reading file, and I would like to discuss it.
Excuse me. Please proceed.
Point of inquiry, Madam Speaker.
Please state your point of inquiry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I think the bill, I'm curious because it's going to be needing a funding source, whether this bill should be in the committee of the whole. I don't really see anything here that just says, maybe if you have the money or not. But I'm just trying to stay in line with bills that come before us that require funding, if this would be considered going into the committee of the whole.
You're correct. The bill does not have a funding source in it, so I am going to rule it does. We do not automatically go into committee of the whole for this bill.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Senator Kanata, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Safety should always be a top priority for everyone working and doing business in the public sector. Bill 143-37 would require availability for automated external defibrillators, AEDs, in every government office which serves the public. The portable devices are used to treat life-threatening conditions known as sudden cardiac arrest, SCA. SCA can happen to anyone at any time, regardless of any age or health status. It occurs when the heart suddenly stops beating, effectively cutting off blood flow to vital organs. Statistics show that the survival rates of SCA are low without access to AEDs. However, with the quick use of an AED along with CPR and the survival rates increase significantly. This is why it's crucial to have AEDs available and readily in all public places where large numbers of people gather. I seek my colleagues' support with this bill to keep our government employees and the general public safe and healthy in all our government spaces. Thank you again, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Kanata. On the bill, is there anyone who'd like to be recognized on the bill? Senator San Augustine, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of the bill, and I believe in the question of funding. We'll let the department determine if they have the funding, and I'm almost sure they're going to say they've got enough money, they have enough funds, and when the issue comes back up on the budget when we start next year, then we'll just be prepared to provide the additional funding to ensure that we're there to make sure that the people of Guam that go to these agencies are protected. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator San Augustine. On the bill, is there anyone else who'd like to be recognized? Senator Brown, you are recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I mean, I certainly understand the intent of the author of this particular bill, and nice that we're going to fund it, but I don't know how much it's going to cost. I don't know, does that mean every senator has to have one in their office along with every government agency? You know, what's required for training, if at all? Are these pieces of equipment going to be maintained, or are they simply going to be used? If they don't work, are they disposable? I think that's fundamental to passing this, is knowing answers to those questions. So if the sponsor may yield to those questions, I would like to ask them so that we in the public can have a better understanding what the implications are. It's easy to want to do things and mandate them, but the actual execution, there's so much in the government we mandate that we just can't deliver. And I'm also concerned what the liability is. What if someone misuses this equipment on someone? What's the outcome of that, and who's liable? Is it going to be the government or the individual that's using the equipment or misusing it because they're not well trained or trained at all? And, you know, we were told it comes with instructions. You know, is that going to be adequate enough for somebody who's not familiar with this? Is any training going to be provided? Because anything can be misused if it's not used properly. I mean, just even doing basic life-saving requires training. So I just wanted to ask the author if he'd respond to those questions.
Would the sponsor yield to the questions?
I yield to the questions, but if we can go ahead and dispose of them individually, I'd appreciate that.
That's not a problem. What is the cost of it, purchasing one of these pieces of equipment?
At this time, based on a Google search, it's $900 to $2,000.
$900 to $2,000. And is each senatorial office going to need to have one of these? We're not all in the same building. We're, you know, in different locations. Does the individual offices constitute a government agency?
Yes, as long as you're serving government offices.
Okay, so colleagues, of those of you that are running tight on your budget, be mindful of that. Is there any training going to be provided to any government employees? Who's going to be using this? And and then the other question is, after that, is what's the liability if it's misused and it may adversely, you know, affect an individual?
My understanding is there is an instructional panel on all of these machines, and they are not calibrated for advanced life support. They're simply just moderated for the private use and not over jolting someone. And the liability is always going to be there, but at the end of the day, whoever is rendering the services is going to basically be covered under the law. But it's similar to giving out CPR. You uphold the liability. You have to render CPR services until such time the advanced life support arrives or any ambulatory services.
Thank you.
Good Samaritan law. There, sorry.
Senator Brown.
I just think it would be helpful, Madam Speaker. I mean, be it the Guam Fire. I don't know if Guam Fire came and testified. Did they come and testify at a hearing to relay? Would they be willing to provide training programs or whatever the case may be? Because, you know, it's not like we're jump-starting a car. You know, a car I can afford to dispose of if it's, you know, damaged. I can replace the car. I can replace parts of a car. I don't think anyone's arguing the need to want to assist someone who may be under duress and may need this type of assistance, but how do we even diagnose to determine that that's what they need? You know, that to me, I don't look at that as something casual, and I think there has to be a better process if we're going to mandate this. We're addressing this issue with no funding, and I don't know, $1,200 to a couple thousand, you know, for a lot of people, that's a lot of money. A lot of people don't even have that in their bank account right now. So if we're going to, and I'm sure I'm not going to have a problem in my office purchasing it if it's mandated. I'm sure I can afford it in my budget. It'll be a stretch, but I think I can do it. But I think when we're mandating agencies these amounts, and yet we'll get around to it in the budget next year to fund it. And then also I think the critical component is if training can be provided. Is there an organized process for the government, since this is something we're mandating the government to do and mandating government agencies to do, to have some kind of overall training, to know and identify what the symptoms might be, because we're not medical experts, you know, to assess someone that may be in need of this assistance. And then, the basic level how to use it and make sure we're using it properly, because it doesn't help if we're not using it properly and the individual dies. Money isn't going to help you. At that point, money is useless. So I think, as we go through these processes, we need to think a little further about how can we properly implement it so it can be effective. Because I foresee problems, and I see who's going to monitor this? Who's going to verify that each agency actually is following through? Who's going to be the policing entity of the government to ensure that this is available? Because I'll tell you, we mandate an awful lot of critical things in this community, but the execution, the follow-through, the delivery is not there. And the list is long. I mean, we can go back to basic things government agencies are mandated to perform, and our people out there are scratching their heads going, gee, wow, what wonderful customer service we're getting today. So I think we just need to be mindful with that, colleagues. I don't have an objection to this particular bill, but I think there's some critical components here that are not included and not addressed. And simply mandating and saying we passed it is nice, but I just see potential issues in follow-through. And like I said, who's going to check and verify? Who's going to update the public? Who's going to know that this is available? Can the equipment be maintained, or if it's not working, what? We just trash it, buy another one? What is the process of that? I think we need to be mindful of these particular, I think they're critical to the whole idea of trying to implement this within the government of Guam. With that, Madam Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to ask questions and comment.
Thank you, Senator.
If I could just respond to the question earlier.
Senator
regarding-
Brown, did you want the sponsor to yield? Are you asking him to yield to your question? Senator Kanata, would you yield to the question?
I will be having another legislation perhaps down the road to probably seek GFD's oversight on this, to potentially be the ones to enforce the regulations of it, and they would basically on an inspection basis.
Sizus Masi, Senator Kanata. On the bill, Senator Taitsky, you're recognized on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, many times we've been ridiculed by the public for introducing legislation, mandating legislation without any appropriations. And we need to put a stop to it. Our financials are not in good standing right now. Some people may think so, but the reality is it's not. It stopped raining federal funds. And that's another issue. We start mandating these defibrillators to go in certain areas, then you're supplanting any opportunity for federal grants. I attended the public hearing. Nobody showed up. There was nothing from our agencies. But there was a physical note that was provided to the body. And I'd like to read that into the record so that the listening audience can see what was said. Maybe even answer some questions on the cost. The proposed legislation intends to require the availability of automatic external defibrillators in all government of Guam departments, agencies, inclusive autonomous and semi-autonomous agencies by June 30th, 2024. It is noted that the intent is for each department agency to provide access to AED within an office that provides service to the general community of Guam and have to be available during hours that the government offices are open to the public. Further, the bill states that each department or agency may create the provisions for the deployment and the use of AEDs. The Bureau estimates that it will cost $143,000 to $325,000 for the government of Guam to make available the AED to each department agency, including 42 Guam Department of Education school campuses, 4 Guam charter school campuses, and 19 village mayors. The cost estimated provided could potentially increase as much as $247,000 to $429,000 if certain required AED access are included with each purchase of an AED. Cost estimates would likely increase should each government of Guam department agency have more than one office. Lastly, there is no There is no appropriation or funding source identified in this proposed legislation, and the estimated costs for the procurement of AEDs are not factored into the department's FY24 certified budget. If I'm not mistaken, this is supposed to happen by June 30th, 2024. And there has been no funding in our budget, the budget that we recently passed, for this. You mean, I agree in public safety. I mean, I totally support it. I mean, I would love to see a satellite clinic down in Inalahan. A good senator from Barragata is requesting for. And that's going to cost money. I'd like to see more, areas that are hard to get to provide health services there as well. But we have to be realistic. I mean, this is opening Pandora's box, my colleagues. Anybody can write a bill and saying, okay, I would like solar lights to be replaced to every light on Guam and in the public and put that up. Well, what's the cost for that? Oh, I don't know. I don't care. Let's just do it. So what, to get your name in the paper? That's ridiculous. If you're going to put a bill out, you better identify the funding that's going to pay for it. Else you're giving false promises to the people of Guam. Almost $500,000 to cover this by June 30th. The fiscal note, we rely on fiscal notes to be responsible. This is an unfunded mandate, and we complain about the federal government putting unfunded mandates on our island. IHR is always complaining about that. Compact impact. We're having to fork it out. They're not giving us the money to pay for that. And here we're doing it to our own people? Unfunded mandates? I'm very surprised that, I don't even think, let me see what OFB office, if they provided any comments from OFB. No, I don't see anything here from OFB, which there should be. Why isn't OFB in here providing a comment? I'd like to ask the chairman of OFB, why don't we have a notice from them? There is? I don't see one here. If I can get a copy, I appreciate it. I'd like to read that in for the record, see what they have to say. Okay, here, thank you. Technology. It pretty much mirrors exactly what BBMR said. In fact, it just reiterates. It should be noted that the bill does not provide any appropriation nor any funding source to support the bill's intention or to cover additional costs that may be incurred by procurement offices not included in the FY 2024 budget. It just mirrors exactly what they said. Now, I believe, Madam Speaker, if I'm not mistaken, Guam Code Annotated Health and Safety, Chapter 96, the Public Access to Automated External Defibrillators Act of 2000. I'd like to ask the author of the legislation if he has an opportunity to actually read the current Guam Code Annotated regarding external defibrillators, where it already states it says the administration is capable of recognizing the presence and absence of defibrillators and rapid vehicle cardia, and the capable of determining without intervention by operator whether defibrillator should be performed. Okay, it goes further down. I mean, Chapter 96 actually talks about it. Access to public defibrillators, Section 96104. In order to ensure the public health and safety, a person or entity who requires a AED shall ensure that, 1, expected AED users complete a knowledge and skill course in CPR and AED use based on current American Heart Association significant guidelines, standards, and recommendations. Oh my gosh, they have to go through a whole slew of training. That we were just talking, I think OB was just talking, or BB Minar was just talking about the equipment. Now you got a whole slew of training that's required. Where's the funding source for that? Let's not open Pandora's box, my colleagues, and start introducing legislation that doesn't have any funding. It's bad enough we're introducing legislation that just says, use the general fund. So let's not open this box. So, Madam Speaker, I object to this bill on those reasons. I love the intent. Don't get me wrong. I love the intent. But find the funding source. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the bill, Vice Speaker, you're recognized on the bill.
Madam Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to speak and rise in support of this bill 143-37 LS as provided by the good senator from Jigo and Barrigada. And I also, Madam Speaker, want to thank him for giving me the opportunity to be a part of the co-sponsorship for this legislation. Madam Speaker, maybe a little history to our colleagues here in this august body, that the AEDs that we're talking about, automated external defibrillators, are should be in all of the educational facilities here on the island of Guam. And for those that don't know, this automated external defibrillator or automatic electronic defibrillator is a portable electronic device that automatically diagnoses the life-threatening cardiac arrhythmias of ventricular fibrillation, which is VF, and pulseless ventricular tachycardia, and is able to treat them through the fibrillation. And I want to say that this AED literally is a life-saving equipment. When we did the legislation to make sure that every educational facility had it within the government of Guam, it was very, very well received. As a matter of fact, the public hearing at that time had the support. And I'm going to tell you, Madam Speaker, in everything that we legislate and we do, in a perfect world, in a perfect place, you got the money, you can do almost anything. But when you're looking at the possibility, Madam Speaker, of saving a life, possibly a life, could be your brother, it could be your sister, it could be a friend, it could be anybody who you think or you believe in your heart is good, but happened to be in a government facility and literally had a heart attack. You and I know, Madam Speaker, that story has happened here on our island of Guam. And not to mention names, I personally know And if I can put my name, Madam Speaker, on a legislation that could possibly save a life, I take that. Madam Speakers, sometimes you have to take funding from the main purse to make sure that your family is safeguarded or protected, or just the mere subconscious knowledge of knowing that if I go to that building and if I got a heart attack or something happened, right? That there is a device there that could possibly save my life or my mother's life or my sibling's life or my friend's life. I can stand here, Madam Speaker, and say, I want my colleagues to look at this bill. And even if it's going to cost something, it is a cost well worth it to make sure that the government of Guam is doing its job, to make sure that that necessary equipment is there. The same way, Madam Speaker, that we made it mandatory that each facility had fire extinguishers, that each facility had proper lighting systems in place, that each government facilities had other equipment necessary to make sure that the safety and the welfare of our constituents, our consumers, or our customers that go through these facilities, that safeguard is there. So, Madam Speaker, this legislation is one of those legislations that may not have a funding source right now. But I will definitely, Madam Speaker, ask the good chairman on OFB, the purse holder, to make sure that there is an opportunity for each agency to acquire these things if this proposed legislation becomes law. Because, Madam Speaker, in my heart of hearts, if there is a life that could be saved because somebody was having some heart difficulties, knowing that the number one death on Guam is still heart issues, I know in my heart that we'd be doing something right. And at a price, yes. At a little price that we as leaders would have to pay or to find the resource so that our constituents, our community who go into our government facilities know that they have the proper equipment in place. The same way we have some other equipments that are there to help constituents who go through government facilities. So, Madam Speaker, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak and rise in support of this effort. And I, again, want to thank the good senator from Jigo and Barrigada to literally being brave enough to put this bill on the floor. Thank you, to help save a life. Thank you.
So just Masi, Vice Speaker, on the bill, is there anyone else who'd like to speak on the bill? If not, we're going to take a 1-minute recess. We're back from recess. Is there any other senator who'd like to speak on the bill? Any senator on the bill? Senator Barnett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on the measure. I'm a co-sponsor of this measure. Thank you. All right. And I was having some flashbacks because when I introduced a similar measure that would mandate the placement of AEDs at every public school on the island, I introduced that measure and it lacked a funding source. And so just listening to some of the debate this morning, like I said, been there, done that. And I just wanted to go back over the public hearing where the chairman, Senator San Augustine, had testified here. We do need to take a look at every agency, and like was mentioned, as you comment, every senator's office and so forth. Just take a look on how we want to move this bill forward to make sure that when we move it forward, it has a source of funding and a means to fund it, because there may be federal grants that will pay for this. But at the end of the day, we need to make sure we have funding to train folks to be able to maintain it and identify funding on how it needs to be replaced or even updated. And so I know that the good chairman foresaw this issue back in the public hearing. And so, yes, saving lives, we all want to save lives. I don't think anyone in here is going to disagree with the intent of this measure. Definitely not me. But unfortunately, saving lives costs money, right? And if there is a way to pay for this through an amendment or whatever, I would ask that of the authors so that we can get the full support of the body and address some of these concerns. Because I know that for my measure, again, I had to amend the budget bill to include the funding so GDOE could go out and purchase these AEDs. And I just spoke with the head nurse, and it's a long process to go through the procurement. And, you know, they're also working with the Guam Fire Department. So, yeah, we definitely want to save lives. I hear that all the way, but then I also hear the concerns of my other colleagues who are saying, basically, we can't save a life if we don't have the money to pay for the life-saving equipment. And I'm confident that the appropriations chair will if he hasn't already found the money, will find the money. And I support this measure because the vice speaker was also correct that, you know, this is for our people. And God forbid that instance happens, that emergency, where someone needs a piece of life-saving equipment that isn't there, that has not ever been there in a government office. And so I commend my freshman colleague for introducing this measure and kind of working together to close all the gaps. And so I introduced the AED bill for GDOE, and then Senator Kanata obviously has introduced this Bill 143, which we're currently discussing. But I also had another measure that I felt would really close the loop on the AEDs, that I introduced 102 bills back. Bill number 41, which is yet to receive a public hearing, and this bill would mandate the placement of AEDs at our senior centers for our precious Banamco. And the bill has not had a public hearing yet. And so I know we're in the holidays and the oversight of the mayors is probably a little busy, but I just would ask that that bill be heard so that we can save lives, especially those of our Manamco, should anything happen. But again, I know I'm not sure if it sounds like I'm supporting the bill, but I do support it because this is for our people. And it's worth it to save just one life. Vice Speaker is correct, but we can't save a life if we don't have the money. And again, I think the money's there. It's just a matter of finding it, whether it's an amendment or something coming down later. So yeah, I thank again the author for this measure, and also my colleagues for the thorough discussion and debate. It was not easy to sit and listen to that stuff. I've been in that situation before, but I think it's coming from a good place so that we send a bill out the right way the first time. And we have seen this body very recently turn out some seriously flawed legislation and then come back and say, oh, never mind, we're gonna introduce a bill and we're gonna fix that. But in the meantime, it's legal. So I definitely understand where my colleagues are coming from. It's a place of concern that I think should be concerned. So thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Is there any other senator who'd like to be recognized? Senator Duenas.
Sidus Masi, Madam Speaker. I certainly understand the concerns. First of all, I rise in support of the bill. I certainly understand the concerns that have been expressed. But I do have to say that with this critical piece of equipment, you know, Madam Speaker, generally most fiscal offices or fiscal teams within the governor's office will start a fiscal year by putting on anywhere between 5 and 15% of a kind of a reserve within agencies. We know that sometimes government actions for employment and other things that require, you know, the use of appropriations are critical. And money is moved around all the time, Madam Speaker, within agencies for different purposes. You know, as a matter of fact, I just recently got an email from some good friends over at Public Health asking me to address the issue between the disparity of the pay raises that were given to the nurses and pay raises that were given under the general pay plan. There's about a 5 to 7% differential. And so my return email to them was, please speak to your director. Please deal with your board, because that's how we did pay raises before we had an appropriation from the legislature. And I got a wonderful response that they're moving on that. So that's a large, big ticket item, Madam Speaker. You know, that requires funding adjustments that we've done and the executive branch has done throughout time. But I have to zero in once again on why I agree, even with the back and forth of the retiring speaker on the support. But the key support issue is this is a life-saving piece of equipment. And I just think when it comes down to that, it's important that we support that. I would have a hard time believing that an agency will come back to this legislature or even to their Office of Finance and Budget or BBMR and say, I'm not buying this because this is an unfunded mandate. I would think that they would find it within their budget to fund it. And if for some great reason that it had that large of an impact, you know, they would request an additional reimbursement for their next budget cycle. So I certainly have stood up on this floor, Madam Speaker, and preached about fiscal responsibility, and I don't feel as though I'm shirking that responsibility, because I feel that there are certain things that we do from time to time that when we make these decisions, we make them for exceptional reasons. I also would like to think, Madam Speaker, and this is something that I did as a director at Youth Affairs and other agencies. You know, when we talk about training like CPR, when we talk about training on life-saving equipment and the like, a lot of times there's a real lot of give and take within agencies in terms of doing that training for free. You know, I mean, if we're talking about a cycle for a police officer or a fireman, okay, I got you. When you're talking about, you know, equipment and uniforms and different things that require thousands of dollars with regard to training. But when we're talking about a use of a piece of equipment that really does already come with a lot of its parameters of what it's designed to do, you know, it's not, you couldn't put something that was purchased off the shelf in a building that was required to be operated by a certified individual in terms of a life-saving piece of equipment. I mean, that's why you find those type of things in ambulances and in hospitals and other areas where they're not available to the general public, because they're to be used really by only trained personnel. But you're basically looking here at another tool in the toolbox, and when this bill passes, or if it passes, I have plenty of money in my budget for this. And I will immediately, maybe even without a law, purchase one, because I have different individuals of various ages and, you know, health situations in my office, and I'd like an opportunity to save their life if I could with a piece of equipment that should be readily available. So I look at this as the right thing to do. And like I said, I think that most agencies will find it not too ultra difficult to take one more step to provide a layer of safety and life-saving capability within the government of Guam offices. So for that reason, Madam Speaker, I certainly rise in support of this bill. Sizus Masi.
Buen provecho, Senator Duenas. On the main motion, I'm going to go ahead and recognize Speaker Therese Chalahi on the main motion. Speaker, you are recognized.
I'm looking for the copies of my floor amendment, but I'll begin. It should be passed out. Or can we just take a 1-minute recess, please?
We are in a moment's recess. Y mina 37 na legislature in Guam is back from recess. Speaker Terlahi, you still had the floor. You are recognized.
So I am rising in support of the bill. However, I think that the earlier comments made by my colleagues are very much on point. One being that according to the fiscal notes that we have received from both BBMR and OFB, there is no funding for the bills, and that the mandate that we are placing on these agencies to provide these AEDs are not going to be able to be filled by them. And that's what they call an unfunded mandates in our statutes. So I would like, before we pass the bill, if I'm going to support it, to address that as best as we can, knowing what we know. And so what I'm proposing to do is to use the model that was used when we passed this mandate for Guam Department of Education, and that was to give them a time frame that they could work with and mandate that they include a request in their upcoming budget so that it could be funded. And as we saw, that was successful, and the chairperson of the education was able to fund those in our last budget request. So my amendment would be to page 2, lines 12 and 13, changing where it says access to AEDs as required by paragraph A supra must be completed by June 30, changing that to October 30, and including a new sentence that says request for funding shall be included in the fiscal year 2025 budget request. So that's October 30 is 30 days after the beginning of the FY25 budget. If they include this in their requests for that FY 2025 budget and it is passed, they should have enough funding to obtain these devices as if they plan ahead. So this is giving them that many months' notice to plan ahead. So that's my amendment to begin with.
Thank you. Speaker Chilai, on the amendment, Senator Tadegui, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I thank my colleague for recognizing this as an unfunded mandate legislation and trying to correct it. But I think it might fall short on the purchasing of this, because if you notice, it says access to the AEDs are required by subsection A super must be completed by October 30th. I believe that the procurement process may take a little bit longer than October 30th. So if I may ask the author of the amendment that if this could, pose an issue on getting this to comply by October 30th, because like everything, it goes through procurement. So it's just my question, that maybe this should be extended for at least 30, or more than just 30 days, but maybe about 60 days, so it can go through procurement.
Speaker,
it's just a question.
Would you like to yield?
I'll yield, but I don't really know the answer. It really depends on every agency. If they're going to do their procurement separately, it depends on GSA. If GSA is going to do the bulk procurement for all of the line agencies, I would think there are some agencies that can actually afford this, like our autonomous agencies. They should be able to get this right away. But for the line agencies, it's just a matter of whether GSA is able to be prepared on the beginning of October and put these out or not. I don't know. You're probably right that it would require longer time, but I guess I don't want to give them that right now, because I think we should get it in as soon as possible, and we should give them notice, and they should be planning. But I'm open to any amendment to the date.
Senator Tadegui.
One of the process in procurement is to identify funding before you go through the procurement. Any procurement is to identify the funding. So if they're going to try and start the process ahead of time, like maybe in August, knowing it's going to come or it's part of their budget bill, it's still not identified as real money until the budget bill passes. So that being said, Madam Speaker, I think, you know, to extend this to at least December 30th, if they can get it sooner, even better. But at this point, you know, because of the process, that in order to purchase anything, it has to be identified. The money has to be identified. And you can't get that until October 1st, when the budget bill passes, or when the fiscal year passes, or if she signs it into law sooner. But still, you know, you have to keep those in perspective. So I'd like to make amendment without, you know, killing a tree, to December, at least by December 1st, or December 31st. Can I take 1 minute? I'd like to speak with one of my colleagues regarding the time frame for
A
procurement.
moment's recess. Minister Tashetina Legislature in Guam is back from recess. Senator Tidegui, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for allowing me to speak to one of my colleagues who we all know is very well versed in procurement and the process, and discussing with her, I think the safe date to put in place would be December 31st, 2024, in order to meet any requirements of identifying funding that's needed to go through the process. And like I said, if they can do this sooner, even better. You know, so that's my amendment, to change it to December 31st, 2024.
On the amendment to the TMT amendment, are there any objections? Anyone wishing to speak? Hearing no objections, motion carries. On the TMT amendment as proffered, as amended, Senator Duenas, you are recognized.
Sidus Matazi, Madam Speaker, and I'd like to rise in support of this very reasonable amendment and kind of once again reinforce the statements that I was making earlier. One of the well-known accounting practices within the government of Guam, particularly with line agencies, is called the journal vouchering, which is where you identify accounts to transfer money for any purpose that may have been unintended, or even sometimes, Madam Speaker, there's over expenditures that are experienced within certain agencies, and of course their budget and their budget digest will always delineate a very detailed accounting, but in order to provide a funding source sometimes for things that will arise, and if an account is short, you can simply transfer money into that other account and then reimburse it. And so as we were speaking, and I had a chance to talk to the oversight, of course, for OFB, that in the event any agencies come forward during their budget requests and request the reimbursement, if they go ahead and just buy, they might just procure it this year, Madam Speaker, because the mandate will be there. So with the mandate there, you know, whether they procure it based on what the date set was in terms of funding available, or if they choose to, because they believe it's a high priority for their agency, they could use their current budget, journal voucher the money, therefore they wouldn't be doing a procurement without a funding source. So this really is a reasonable approach, and every agency can basically address it as they see fit. If it's a priority for their agency, they'll make sure it's funded. If it's not, they'll make sure that they do it when the funding becomes available based on how they arrange their line item budget. So it's a very reasonable approach. It makes sure that the mandate goes forward in terms of what we're trying to accomplish here, but also gives flexibility and opportunity for the agencies to provide the funding if this becomes a priority when the law is passed. So I rise in full support of the amendment. Madam Speaker.
You're very welcome, Senator Duenas. On the Terlahi amendment as amended, Senator Brown, then Senator Barnett.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'll keep this in mind because I want to make sure if I want to put something forth to that's going to need funding, I'm going to make sure I use this language because I'm always concerned about our ability to fund things because I don't like, we put on this big show and then the day-to-day operations, the reality is very different. I have to tell you, and I support this amendment by the Speaker. I appreciate her efforts, and I will vote for it. But, I sat in a public hearing last week where we had our park police officers. They were there to update us on their operations. I was also very pleased to see that they expanded from 2 officers to 9. And then I asked about their funding. And they have no overtime funding. And I said, so how do you address issues after hours? They go, well, we do comp time. Well, I'm sure that's kind of nice for a regular operation, but for law enforcement, I don't know that rolls very well. And on top of that, we asked, okay, what's your communication system? We use our cell phones. GPD has our number, and we have each other's number, and we're working on our communication system. That's where you get down into the brass tacks of GovGuam operations. And when you realize that something as critical as what we want to see, I certainly support the expansion of the park patrol and the park police. But when critical operations like that don't have basic funding, then that concerns me because we want to create an image that we're taking care of everything. People, don't worry about it, we got you covered. And we play the politics. But the funding's not there in critical operations like park police, the park patrol that we have out here, that are support to GPD and our other law enforcement, to give our community a sense of comfort that, they'll be safe, or if they want to go out to the parks with their family, that their family's going to be safe. So I've got no argument because I'm sure I probably have a little more reserve than any of my colleagues on this side of the aisle because I've always been conservative. I'm sure I can afford it. That's not the issue. The issue is, can the rest of the government of Guam afford it? And if we're just going to tell them, hey, take it out of your budget, this is the way we do business at the line agencies, and I'm sure the autonomous can cover it, no problem. I don't think that's responsible financing on our part of wanting to ensure that this actually gets in place. And if that's the ultimate goal, then, we should be responsible of ensuring the finances are there, because my goodness, colleagues, a day. The money is falling from the sky. We can't even catch it fast enough because we want to brag about all our extra funding that, we didn't originally plan for. We're 100 million plus. Look at us. Man, we got the Midas touch. Look at us. But when I hear stories like that, like the park patrol out there, the park police, I'm concerned about that. Because then that tells me a critical operation the government is not funded. When I know other government agencies, my goodness, the overtime is almost mandated in their budget. $30,000, $40,000 a year individual for one individual. I'm sure park police would even be happy to have $20,000 or $30,000 to cover all 9 officers. So let's not sugarcoat this issue here because I'm not arguing the need or the desire to have this. Heck, it might be me that needs it. But let's be responsible in how we do things. Let's make sure we're prepared to ensure that these things are properly in place. Because procurement, you tell me do we have a permanent chief procurement officer? Are we not in crisis at DOA these days on procurement? Have we procured the mold? Remember the typhoon we had 6 months ago? Remember the issues with the schools? Has that mold been mitigated? Is that contract out? Is the fencing contract out for the schools? Colleagues, let's go down the list if we want to play this game. So keep in mind, these are great ideas, and hey, I have no problem. Hey, great. But it still doesn't address the training. And if it's going to be a hodgepodge, maybe, maybe Guam Fire can do it, maybe not. Don't worry, just read the instructions, because if someone's suffering from a heart attack, I'm going to go pull those instructions out and make sure I get it down so I'm properly administering it, rather than ensuring that there's some kind of training program like the ethics training, right? We put forth the opportunity for the ethics, our ethics division there to do ethics training for all GovGuam employees. Now we mandate all GovGuam employees have to do ethics training. But something as critical as something that could be life-saving, let's hopefully the government agencies, can get it. Come on. I don't want to put a damper on this, but my goodness, what responsible leadership are we professing for our people when we do this? So we can say, we're mandating it, people. And maybe you'll find the money in your government agency to fund it. And good luck. Yeah, procurement. Procurement is a mess right now in the government. We just had a bill here we talked about yesterday to sidestep some of these protests because we're having so much difficulty procuring critical things that we need and properly spending the federal money that we have available, that have a timeline on them, that we want to ensure is spent in the benefit of our people. Didn't we? Or isn't that on the agenda, colleagues? Did we forget? How quickly did we forget that? Hey, I can play the game here. I've been at it a long time, but wow, come on. Let's ensure that we're being responsible and the funding is there. Yeah, maybe individually we can take care of our funding in our offices. But for the bigger operations that have the bigger price tag, the DOE right now will come and tell us all the things they're not able to do and not able to fund and not able to address. Because they're going, our school maintenance, we need $200+ million. And all we have right now in our federal bank account is 80. We're going to look at start shutting down schools now because, we have 28,000 students now. And a school system that's designed to accommodate 40,000. So maybe we're going to, start closing some schools because we don't have funding to maintain all of this. I've always been fascinated how we can be such political chameleons. We can be so many different, different shades of whatever. And hopefully our people fall for it, because some of us, they fall for it all the time. But I think we just need to be responsible. What is so unreasonable about ensuring that when we pass this, we got funding attached? I mean, our budget chairman is here. Show me the money. Why can't we do it now? Why can't we put this forth and say we're going to appropriate $1 million or whatever the cost, if we calculate, is going to be? And by the way, we're also requiring a training component so that we can properly administer this great life-saving safety device in the event anyone needs it when they come into a government agency or into any of our respective offices. That's the responsible things to do. But now we're going to pass it, and next fiscal year we'll give them the money. And next fiscal year, within 3 months, hopefully they can procure it. Sounds good to me. We'll see. But colleagues, this is not responsible. We're doing everything backwards. We want the credit before we deliver the work, and that just kind of falls short. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to comment.
You're welcome, Senator Brown. On the amendment, if not, Speaker, would you like to close?
Yes, I'd like to close on the amendment just because there's so many comments made on it. Obviously, there's no money for it because BBMR and OFB said it would require an appropriation, and the appropriations chair at the committee said he was going to continue to work on the bill, and the bill has no appropriation attached to it. So I'm concluding that. Otherwise, it's not a priority right now. But I'm trying to make it a priority, and as the previous speaker said, they could have done this anytime. They could have done this without us mandating them to do it. Any agency can do this. I expect these autonomous agencies will do it whenever they want because they have that kind of money. The line agencies are going to have to wait for a special appropriation for that or for the budget as we're proposing here. I don't even think the fiscal notes included training materials or the cost of training, which my understanding is that is quite significant. So this amendment would give us the opportunity to, at the very least, make sure it's funded in the budget, or if the appropriations chair tells us at that time that we can't fund it, then this bill should be repealed at that time, or it should be amended, or something should happen. But that's where it would be fixed. And I don't know how to address the talk about the crisis in procurement up at GSA. That's what I tried to talk about yesterday. I asked, do we have a chief procurement officer, or is that person being interfered with, moved around, or because one of the reasons why this is even relevant, or that was relevant, was because that was one of the excuses given to us, according to DOE, that their procurement for the $20 million in typhoon repair, including mold mitigation, had not gone through. So I don't know the answers to those questions, and but I do think they are relevant, so I agree. However, we are policy making. We are trying to say by policy, this is one of our priorities. It should be a priority in our 2025 budget. So that's what I'm trying to do by this amendment. My point in this amendment was that we like the policy, but I also like the policy that it was back, I think, in 1999 or 2000, where they said that was the first time the legislature required fiscal notes, and then it was after that when they established an independent OFB for the legislature to also ascertain on its own whether the administration's BBMR projections and the legislature's were the same, because they don't. Anyways, that's a check and balance for us. So I just want to honor that as well, that the fiscal notes, that we are going to address them, and the law actually says it's not supposed to be reported out of committee without the funds, but we're here, and I think so this is a fix to this bill, and that if we'd like these automated external defibrillators at all government offices, that this is how we can pass this bill. So on that amendment, I thank my colleagues for their support and ask them to support the amendment. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Speaker. On the Speaker Terlahi amendment as amended, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. On the main motion, Speaker Terlahi, you still have the floor.
Thank you. I just want to also just raise something else that my colleagues had also raised, and that is, when we need proper training for people to utilize this equipment, we need the equipment, and we need what Senator, I think it was Larry Kasperbauer, the former Vice Speaker, had passed, was a law. It's called the Defibrillation Act of 2000. What it did was, it didn't make it mandatory, but it said if you have these defibrillators, you are going to be, and you use them. First, it mandated training, and I think the training requirements are excellent. And it talks about you have to have completed these courses to use these things, but if you did and you use them in good faith and without compensation, you render emergency care, that you will be immune from any liability in that regard. And so it's like a Good Samaritan law with training. So they have to be trained before they can do that, and if they are and they do it in good faith and that they're not hired to do that, then they would be immune. So I think that immunity would apply if these are put into the government offices. Of course, I'm much more concerned about really the training. I really think, what's the use of having this equipment if we can't train the people? So I think that's going to be a huge challenge. When DOE, we passed this for DOE, we required a whole list of people to be trained, and I'm not sure the status of that, but I am very concerned. For example, I'm even just thinking about the legislature. Who's going to be trained in this? Who are we going to call? What a responsibility that is going to be to have. But I know that we have very many good people in our agencies who would be willing to do this. There was something else that was brought up in discussion on this bill. I don't know if it's relevant, but I'm just going to say it anyway since it was brought up. But it was regarding the park police. Yeah, so the park police have been established in law for a long time. But because there were not enough funds, they were not, we have not seen them for a while, at least. I'm not sure since when, but for a while. And then we've seen them now. And there was a hearing, an oversight hearing that had, and there was like several members of this. So I'm not sure that that was specifically delineated in the budget either. But obviously, these agencies are picking and choosing what their priorities are, and with their lump sum budgets, funding what they think their priorities are. So I guess I would just be encouraging. I'm concerned because I want to make sure these are funded mandates. They're not simply ARP funded positions that are going to go away soon, or that, you know, we're not going to be able to afford. But if we're affording this, then I'm very happy, and I just want to encourage all the agencies to do what they can to train their employees in this regard in preparation for this equipment being brought in. Situs Masi, Madam Speaker.
When Bubetsu Speaker Chirlai, on the main motion. On the main motion. If not, Senator Roy, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate all my colleagues' concerns and reservations stated today. But I would rather that we have these tools that can save lives in the position that it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. One life saved is enough for me. And that's pretty much it. It's imperative that we afford the equipment and afford the training to each individual, and that's why I'm very happy that Speaker Therese brought up the information of Senator Casper in 2000, where there was already legislation proffered in the same sentiments of the Good Samaritan law. Again, this is an AED system that's really modern. It's AI. It literally checks your own heart rate. It has its own techie stuff that can fixate whether or not the energy or jolt needs to be applied. If not, it will dismiss it, and it will not even discharge anything to the individual. It will just tell them that this service is not needed. But again, certainly it's CPR. You need to have the training to do it, then we will provide that as well. And I'm very happy that there was some kind of amendment that passed, and we can work together collaboratively to ensure that this equipment is afforded to our people, and at the end of the day that these tools are available at the time that people may need it, whether it be us, whether it be you, whether it be someone we don't even know, maybe a tourist at the airport, we don't know. But again, nothing further. I just want to move this bill to the third reading file, if possible.
Thank you, Senator Canetta. On the motion to place Bill 143-37 to the voting file, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Colleagues, we are going to move for recess to 2 o'clock. Okay, any objections? Seeing none, motion carries. We are in recess.